Hello and welcome everyone to our weekly Intuit Talks on the Moon Deck page. My name is Arana Leah. I am the author and head witch of the Moon Deck, and today you get me. Most weeks we have a guest. Once a month I take it over, and just to be transparent with you all, we are figuring out how and if to move forward with Intuit Talks. So if you have some feedback or these really help you, let us know that you are here for it, because we've been doing these for a year straight with amazing guests, as many of you know. And by the way, if you ever want to go back into any of those replays, all of them live on our page. You can easily find them by clicking on all of the images that are of other women other than me, and then some of me, and you just tap on that and watch the conversation. And even if they were in the past, they're still very relevant. So explore our library of all the lives, all the Intuit Talks that we've done with incredible people, and lots of Moon Deck readings. So today you get me, as I said, and I'm really here to pick some cards for you, of course, from the Moon Deck, talk about morning rituals, how to declutter our energetic field. That could be mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. That can mean a lot of different things, and we'll explore that today. What else did I say we're talking about? How to be fully embodied and in our hearts through all the trials and errors and ups and downs and highs and lows that life will certainly throw our way, but we want to use that as material to learn and grow from. I promise it is possible, it is a practice, and it's really the only way forward. And I just, on my personal page, if you don't already follow my personal page, please do. It's arana.leah. You can easily find it in the bio here. That's where I really share a lot of my personal writing and poetry and some of the sort of the deeper inner workings that I experience. And then once they move through me, they get delivered to you in the form of writing, in the form of new products, in the form of trainings. And so many of you know and just to give you a little history as well. Oh, before I jump to that. So the post that I did make on my personal page is really what's so alive for me right now. And I want to talk about it here with you today. And basically what my last post was about, that I just posted this morning, that is being influenced from a few things in my life right now that I'll share with you, some of the support kind of net that I've created in my growth. And really what's most alive is that we all have an operating system. And Susie Batiste, who I had on last week, talks a lot about this. I'm actually participating as a student in her 8-week training alongside leading my own 8-week training for the Intuitive Oracle, where we just finished our 3rd week. And it's like that we all have this operating system. And for a lot of us, our systems, our programs are probably, I believe, based on some past life and some of the things that have been passed down to us by our ancestors and our lineage, but also things that have happened in this life. And it's really up to us. As adults, we have to come to a point where we choose to move beyond the patterns that are suffocating our light or creating more suffering or struggle, and start to little by little chip away at what no longer serves us, and stop feeding the demons or the patterns that don't work for us, that are expired, or certain protective means that we used to need that we no longer need, to start to shift those into a new operating system. And something she had said in her training, Susie Batiste, that really stuck with me, 2 things that I want to share with you today, is that when you upgrade an operating system on your computer, for example, you're not necessarily like deleting the old one or swiping it away, although I'm sure that's possible. But typically, the old operating system is still there, but you're bringing a new one on top, and then cleaning the desktop, decluttering, doing all the things you need to, so that we optimize the new operating system, which is informed by the old operating system. So traumas in our past, heartbreaks, suffering and struggles and pains, the ups and downs of life, things that we have learned, things that we get to harvest into our current wisdom today, are all there for us to grow and become more aligned with our highest blueprint. Now, keep in mind that does not mean that we're not already whole. Just because we choose healing and growth does not mean we're broken. We can be totally whole, fully human, having this human experience while also upgrading our operating system, while also choosing to heal and innovate new ways of being from old traumas and wounds. As another teacher of mine says, Christine Clemmer, I do her daily 5D astrology calibrations. Look her up. She's amazing. She talks about how we move through the wound into our mastery. So all of these things are topics that are so alive for me right now in my personal life, in my professional life. As many of you know, I am a former yoga teacher and holistic health guide of just over 16 years professionally, now and turned full-time CEO and business owner, advocate for emotional, mental, spiritual, and intuitive well-being. And that's where I teach and create from, alongside all these other facets. And I know everyone here is also multifaceted, is also sensitive. And I believe that if you're here, you probably have a deep passion and curiosity for growth. And as I wrote on my personal page in today's post, I really feel like the deep work that we do, the transformative deep work that we do, again, keep in mind, this is not because we're broken. We are already whole. But I also welcome more wholeness, more integration, so that I no longer feel fragmented or anxious or overwhelmed with worry and fear, because worry and fear can fragment us, so that we can take all of that and really, I look at this as the greatest fortune when we do this work and we come and we bear all the fruits of that work, and we bear new tools and new ways and new medicines and new art and new magic from that deep work. That is the greatest fortune for our soul, and perhaps the only fortune our soul takes with it when our body's gone. We definitely aren't taking our bank account when we die. We're not taking our children even. We're not taking our fancy pair of shoes. We're not taking the book deal. We're not taking the house. All of that stuff might be nice in life and part of the legacy that we leave behind. But I believe that when our soul moves on, what it takes with it is how much we are able to develop our heart and our ability to give and receive love, how much we are able to increase our capacity for the full experience of being a human, and how curious and teachable we were willing and able to be day by day, moment to moment, when it comes to looking at ourselves and our relationships with sweet and non-judgmental honesty. And everything I just said is a work in progress. It's all a work in progress. It's about progress, not perfection. And so if you do have a fierce inner critic or judge who likes to kind of wrestle with you around these things, I just want to remind you that we are all in these practices together, and to just cut each other some slack, try to meet one another where we truly are, just like we want to be met. And things like the Moon Deck, things like your morning practices, things like journaling, meditation, connecting to, supportive guidance that you trust, are all tools to help us navigate this terrain with as much presence and grace and growth as possible. So that's my little spiel. I just want to see if I've missed any comments here, because I saw some come through, but I was on a roll, so I didn't look. This is the third time I've come across a post or someone saying about morning rituals since this morning. This is my first time tuning in, and I'm here for it. Awesome. Just ordered the Moon Deck. So excited to get it. Thank you. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. All right. So go ahead and take a comfortable seat if you're not already. Feel free right now to share this with your friends, to invite them to join. We are going to pick some cards from the Moon Deck, talk about intuition, go into morning rituals. And when I'm here live with you, I really treat this time as a learning experience for all of us, kind of like a workshop, but way more candid and sort of, open to where the Spirit takes us. So invite your friends, invite your community here, and do feel free to drop any questions or comments in the little comment section at the bottom that are really relevant for you right now. What is a deep question that you have around, I'll give you some topics: intuition, morning rituals and practices, right? Growth mindset, having a growth mindset even on the tough days, how to trust yourself more fully. Any questions around any of that? And those questions could be, about your personal growth. It could be about how you navigate your life professionally, spiritually, emotionally, mentally. I just want to be here to really support you today around these questions, because I know that every single one of us needs reminders of how much power we have in any moment to make a choice, to choose to really just be ready to outgrow the old patterns that no longer serve us, so that we start to, as I said, upgrade our operating system and unify as much as possible with the deeper truth that resides in our heart, and really like our highest blueprint, whatever that means for you. I don't believe it's a fixed or static thing. As we grow, it expands and grows. As we peel one layer away, another layer is revealed. But I do believe, and I'm experiencing it right now in my life, that like all the years of work on ourselves, all the little steps you take, all the little ways you've reached out for help and brought counsel into your life, all the ways you were able to be there for others, it does add up. And you'll have these moments in your life where things start to click and culminate. And as those kind of different avenues culminate, there's a huge opportunity there, as I said, to upgrade the operating system, to create something new, whether that's in the form of art or music or even just your own emotional growth. And it's such a beautiful practice that, as I said earlier, if you're just coming on, is the greatest fortune to our soul. It's kind of like helps our soul sparkle when we are willing to heal and grow, and then access that healing and growth in a way that can serve others. And that's going to look really different for each of us. So I just want to invite you, even if you have your journals out right now, to write that for yourself. Like, what's most alive for you right now? What wounds are making themselves known, so that you actually deal with them and get really honest with yourself and really look at your own reflection with a loving, non-judgmental willingness to learn from it and grow and see what needs to be shifted and adjusted, and to really hold steady as you move through that, because it can get intense sometimes when we're facing ourselves or we're facing these old belief systems, habits, or patterns that no longer serve us. It's not always comfortable, and it's not always convenient. I will let you know that right now. It doesn't mean there's no space for play and joy. Of course there is. That's part of it. But I do want to encourage you to take those steps if you know that there is a part of you beckoning to be seen and heard in this way, and if anything that I'm saying is resonating. So we have here, I want to dive deeper into intuition. Been working with tarot more. I think it's helping. Great. So the Moon Deck is an oracle deck. It's different than tarot. Oracle decks are different than tarot cards, although they are both used as divination tools. And I think a lot of oracle is certainly inspired by tarot, but they all are helpful. They've all helped me over the years, whether I'm working with cards on my own as a part of my morning practice or receiving a reading from a professional reader. All of it's been helpful. And if you're anything like me, you probably go through cycles in your life or cycles throughout the year where you hit like a few months where you really need that extra counsel, that extra support to give you some perspective on what's shifting. I really trust that most of you that are here are either deeply curious about intuition and growing into your sensitivities, or you already are in your intuitive sensitivities and you just want to learn how to better trust it and navigate it. And it's about tapping into our internal reserves, but sometimes we do need that outside counsel. How does that look for me? I'll let you know right now, I am doing EMDR therapy, which helps with a lot of trauma that's stored in the body, which is helping me to discern trigger from truth. It's also helping me to stay in my body when things get difficult. So that's been a game changer. I've been doing it for several months. I am also in a weekly poetry group with a very small, intimate group of friends, and that's been going on consistently for a year. So not only is the firm commitment and devotion to this practice healing, right? The devotional practice of commitment for our well-being and growth, that alone is medicine. But also the practice of writing, we do this every Friday morning. It brings me back into my heart. I don't have to produce something. I can kind of let my creative muse come in the way, in the flow. So that's been healing, combined with the EMDR, being a student in an immersive training, which I am right now. I truly believe in investing in ourselves in all ways. I've done that for over 20 years in different ways. It's absolutely necessary, especially for me in my work, because what I learn and heal from eventually moves through me and into the world. And you probably do that in your own way. And then, what's the other thing? Daily practices, sitting at my altar, lighting a candle, doing these, right now I'm in the middle of doing these different astrology calibrations every morning with Christine Clemmer, who I mentioned. It's a 5D astrologist. It's like an audio experience every morning. You can always catch the replays if you can't be there. And there's a few other things, personal practices, but all of those things are happening right now. And I've just kind of become aware how these practices and these guides that I've invited into my life are all acting as threads that are creating this net that feel like they're holding me. I feel held by all these practices. I feel held because of the caliber of people I've chosen to work with, of course. I feel held because of my willingness, devotion, and commitment to show up week after week after week. And now that months have gone by, I'm starting to notice that energy swelling. And then I'm able to bring it into my life. There's a lot of big changes happening right now. I'm sure for many of us, I feel like this kind of intense upgrade happening where I almost feel like I'm on the shore watching myself in the ocean, and it's all happening at once. And it's like these two parallel narratives running, the old narrative and the new becoming one, but they're sort of going parallel. And at times it's like really amazing and interesting. And I feel kind of blissed out by the awareness, and other times it feels like I'm drowning. And so then I come to these practices and that net that again hold me. So it's just so crucial, I believe, for anyone who is on this path. You don't have to do as many things as I'm doing. This is obviously a passion of mine, and it has been for a long time, and it weaves into my work, so it makes a lot of sense for me. But even if you just have one person who can be counsel for you during these times, and then you weave in these practices, can be so huge and helpful. And it enhances our intuition as well. And it reminds us to trust ourselves. How do you know you're experiencing a sign via intuition and not just experiencing anxiety? So in my experience, Jamie, intuition isn't going to feel anxious. If you're feeling anxiety, stress, overwhelm, control, fear, worry, those are not the feelings of intuition. Intuition is more subtle. It's not going to make you feel that way unless maybe if you're like, and I've said this before, maybe if you're like in real danger and your intuition's like, get the F out of here, then of course, when it's gotten that far because we didn't listen to it a few steps prior, then we can feel anxiety. I have felt anxiety that was connected to my intuition in certain relationships that weren't good for me a while back. And I didn't know the difference. I didn't understand that was, I hadn't listened earlier. And then finally my body was like, it was the only way to shake me up, was to make this very uncomfortable feeling of anxiety, which I know very well. So I feel like that's when I feel like this comes down to the practice of discernment, Jamie, and anyone else who relates to that question. Being able to discern is really important practice. And the way we do that is by honoring our boundaries, both in our personal boundaries. And when I say personal boundaries, I'm talking about sticking to your morning rituals, sticking to not beating yourself up and noticing it when that's happening and shifting gears, sticking to self-care that you know is really important for your nervous system, mental health, and emotional health. Finding that counsel, however that looks, whether you're in an immersive training or you have a therapist or you work with a teacher or you have a small group that you connect with weekly or monthly. It's really up to you. But these are all ways to get that to build an ability to self-regulate. And we sometimes learn that from others, to build our strength in discernment so that we understand the energies moving through our body, and we understand the difference between dissonance and resonance in our body. And we understand the difference when, something's off in our nervous system, and that's why we're feeling anxiety, or a trigger is getting, threatened, versus we've been ignoring our intuition to the point where our body's only way to communicate with us now is anxiety. Does that make sense? Typically speaking, and the Moon Deck talks about this in our inner compass card. We'll pick a card soon, and maybe it will pick that one. We'll see. But typically, our intuition is a subtle and loving yet firm voice. It's it's usually helps to create more flow in our life. Sometimes what our intuition tells us isn't always convenient or comfortable, like if it's telling you to make a huge life change. So that can get a little crunchy sometimes. It might take us time to actually listen. And at some point, life's either going to throw us, kick us down, so we have to listen, or we start to learn to listen a little quicker. So what I would recommend is listen to your intuition in the really small stuff, right? So that when the bigger stuff comes, it's not so overwhelming. For example, what kind of tea do you want? Do you want caffeine or no caffeine? Do you want rose tea or chamomile? Listen to the little things. What kind of book do you want to pick up and read? If you have a few different oracle decks, which one do you feel like reading right now? Even coming onto this live and choosing to stay, and something's making you stay. Listen, or to your intuition in those ways. Go for a walk with no distractions. Have your phone on airplane mode. Go by yourself. Maybe put on some chill, non-invasive music and just follow the current. These are ways to strengthen your intuition in the small ways so that they start to get developed and strengthened in the bigger ways, both when it comes to how we take care of ourselves and not ignoring our needs. The more you ignore your needs, the more you're suffocating your intuition. So if you have self-care, that inner voice of self-care speaking to you and practically begging you to show up, and you keep stuffing it down, that will cloud your intuition, your creative flow, the energy of your heart. So start to listen in those ways, and start to listen in those little mundane ways, and it will start to develop a more fluent and more strong and confident connection to your intuition. And then when the big stuff comes up, it'll be easier to access it. Keep in mind that sometimes we learn by screwing it up. Sometimes we learn by not listening. So don't beat yourself up if that happens. If you had an intuitive hit and you totally ignored it and you ended up going against it, and then you learn the hard lesson and you have a consequence afterwards, just be curious about that. Don't beat yourself up. Just be like, okay, that sucks. There's a consequence I have to live with now, but I'm going to own it. I'm going to look honestly at it. And I'm going to recognize that was my intuition. And now I better know the difference of listening to it versus not listening to it. And now I know what it feels like to go against it in my gut or in your body or however it works for you. And then you just have more information to work off of. Does that make sense? All right. And yeah, a couple of you wanted clarity on intuition anxiety. I'm right with you. This is something I'm working on. I do have to say that the EMDR therapy work I'm doing, and you don't have to do that. You could work with an intuitive. You could work with an hypnosis. You could work with a totally different type of therapist. But if you're working with a therapist and all you're doing is going around in circles and talking your shit out every week, and you don't feel like it's progressing, then maybe try something new. That's all I'm going to say about that. That's what I would recommend. Even if you maybe you really like that person for one purpose, but it's not getting you to where you want, you can always add another person or switch it all together. But that type of work helps us get into our bodies. And for me personally, learning to be in my body even when the anxiety is there, because I can be a pretty analytical, heady person just by nature. It's actually like in my chart. I grew up with a lot of chaos, so that got me in my head and kind of like fried my nervous system. There's all these reasons why that I don't need to list off here. But doing the EMDR, doing my physical embodiment practices, sitting with my altar, having these different like people and groups that I'm immersed in to kind of help me get into a different mind frame and help me reframe things is really helping me personally to discern the difference between intuition and anxiety. And when I get caught in anxiety because of the work I'm doing and have been for many years, as I told you, it's starting to feel like this, finally seeing the light at the end of the tunnel with some of the older traumas that I've had to work through. I'm able to kind of be in that for like a day or two, but not a week, or have it completely taint my viewfinder. And that's been personally kind of a breakthrough for me, to see that it's happening, feel it, right? Like in the last month, I've been very close to a couple of panic attacks due to some things happening in my professional life, which are totally working out and going great. But it's what I'm looking at. And this is what I mean when I say, be curious and teachable through it. There's some shit going on right now, right? And in my heart of hearts, in my soul, in my core, I know it's going to be okay. I know that it's directing me into the right direction, onto the right path. Change has to happen. And like, I'm here for it. Like if things need to get thrown off and recalibrated so that I am living in my highest blueprint and I am healing old patterns and trauma that live in my system, I want to take that opportunity. That's just me. If you're here, there's probably at least a drop of you that agrees. So what I'm seeing and what I want to invite you to see right now, especially because this full moon is all about this. This full moon that we just had on Sunday and these next 2 weeks into the new moon is really all about moving through the wound into the wisdom, into your mastery. And that is not a passive practice. If you just sit there expecting it to fall in your lap, it just doesn't work that way. Maybe some things can because of the prior work you've done. Not that everything has to be hard and heavy and dark. Like there's lots of joy in all of this too. There's lots of expansion in all of this too. But the point of that is this particular situation that I'm not going to name right now, that's in my life. Yes, it's a frustrating situation. Yes, it's challenging and heart-wrenching in some ways. And yes, it itself is a real thing that I'm dealing with. But there's so many deep lessons in it that go way, way down into a much older root system. Older roots in my life, older roots from my patterns of my upbringing. So like this is a catalyst, even though it's a real thing that has to be dealt with in a certain way. And that's just the reality, right? I'm seeing because I'm willing to see, because I want the bigger teachings here so that I have more wisdom in my life moving forward as new experiences unfold that are even remotely similar to this, that there's a deeper root system at play. And so for me, without saying too much about it, yes, I'm dealing with the situation at hand, and what the deeper roots are revealing is that I have a fear of things being taken from me, a fear that that how hard I work won't be seen or valued, that like I won't be able to take care of myself, like all these old things that are not true and are not what I've exhibited in my life, but are just old beliefs that are revealing themselves so that I have the opportunity to clean them up for good and upgrade my operating system. Not kick them to the curb or kill them, but transform them into my loyal servants now. Change their job position. Like they are fired from that role and I'm going to shift them to a new role now. These different parts of me that needed to be there as a protector, right? Or as, really as a protector probably. Like I'm letting that part of me know that like, thank you for all the ways you've shown protection. But now as an adult woman, like, it's just creating anxiety. It's making me act in certain ways that I don't want to anymore. It's kicking up old things that are tainting the lens in which I'm seeing the situation in. So yes, I'm owning the truth of the situation and showing up to the best of my ability. And I'm willing to look at the deeper teachings at play, the patterns, the old belief systems that are connected to a much deeper root system. And this particular situation is an opportunity to bring light to deeper healing, growth, and an upgrade that is totally available should I choose to do it, should I choose to access it. And we all have that choice. You don't have to do it. You might not be ready to do certain parts of it. But if it's a little uncomfortable, a little inconvenient, and that's it, like, do it. It's kind of a privilege for us to even have the opportunity to do this work. You know, like, that's all I'll say about that. And you can translate that however you want. So just giving you a little sweet nudge there that you are powerful, that you have the strength to make different choices, to change old patterns, and that when difficult and challenging things show up in your life, whether it's personal, in your health, professional, financial, in your relationships, spiritual, emotional, it can be in any of those realms that it's showing up. One's not bigger than the other. They are all of equal weight when it comes to our personal experience. So whatever it is for you, look at it with a kinder, more loving and curious eyes. Meet it and meet yourself exactly where it is, as it is right now. Know that as we develop deeper growth and healing, we're not doing it from a broken place. We're already whole, but we want to feel more whole and integrated and less fragmented, right? And less on the outside looking in, more trusting of ourselves, like to have deep, deep, deep trust that we carry wisdom in our bones, that we carry knowledge in our blood, that our spirit and our soul is here to support us. Our spirit guides are here to support us, and to constantly pivot from old patterns that bring you down into ones that are more uplifting. And as I said, sometimes we need outside support for that. I'm a huge advocate of that through trainings, immersions, therapy, counsel, small groups of friends who where everything's allowed, where you're learning to be in your heart, through oracle decks, the whole gamut, journaling. There's so much out there. I just bought the Moon Deck. I'm excited. Yes. Does it help bipolar? Yes, I would say EMDR does. I really want to encourage you to do the research, because I don't feel like, I don't have a license, so I'm hesitant to share that, but I do believe that it helps mental health. And it does, EMDR massively helps trauma therapy. So as someone said here, so it can be for big trauma, like, veterans use it, someone who got in a car accident. It can also be, it could also be used for progressive trauma, which is more like what mine is. My trauma is a lot in the interpersonal and relational realm that started at a very, very young age. So that's really why I'm doing it specifically. And some of the mental health disorders, with the exception of a couple out there, can be shaped and influenced from trauma, especially when we were young and our nervous system and our brains were developing. So something like EMDR can be, with the right therapist, can be very helpful for that. Listening is key. Yes, it is. Listening is so key to our intuition. I'm actually working on some writing right now where I break down different types of intuition, like the different types of intuitives. And for all of them, whichever one you are, because our intuition might speak to each of us in a slightly different way. Overall, there's ways that we probably can agree how intuition feels, and we could have fun conversations and probably agree on a lot of things around intuition. And then within that, there's these unique threads that are unique to you. You might be more of a feeler when it comes to intuition. You might be more of a listener or a seer or a dreamer, or you might pick up on cues that are usually invisible to others, but somehow you're seeing them. It's very unique to you. So I want you to develop, and this is about developing trust in yourself. So whoever told you along the way that you're too much, too sensitive, not enough, that you believe in weird things, that you're just in hocus pocus woo woo land, or you're, just in your imagination, start to change those voices. That is not yours. That is someone else's. And we don't need to live with that voice anymore. I'm starting to get really fierce about that. Like, I just feel like there's things we learn from teachers. There's things we learn from teachers. There's things that we learn from our travels. There's things that we learn from our parents and families. There's things that we learn from our peers. And in my opinion, there's also things that we learn directly delivered to us by spirit. Directly delivered to us by our higher self or our future self or our spirit guides. And that's something that I'm starting to develop and trust much, much more. I do think it's important to regard where the teachings come from. When they do come from another teacher or another culture or anything like that, we absolutely need to do our research, have reverence and respect for these things. And I know we are in a day and age where a lot of that's getting pointed out more than ever, and I'm glad it is. I also believe that there's a space that maybe is a little more tender to talk about right now, but I feel protective of in a way, or not, or very curious about, that some things just get downloaded in our meditations, in our own spiritual awakenings, perhaps from past lives or things that our mothers and grandmothers and great-grandmothers carried that might not always have an explanation. And maybe we don't all have that. I think we're all built differently. Like, you might have something like that in a different area of your life, but that's something that's really been coming light to me of like, how can I trust the things that come through me that do feel multidimensional, or like I've channeled it, or that it was passed on to me, but I don't exactly know how or why, while also paying our respects and doing our research and supporting, the more ancient traditions that have truly been passed on in a very clear way. I'm exploring that fine line right now. I haven't even really voiced it besides here. I'd be curious to explore what you think about that. All right, just looking at your comments here. I understand that, but also I've lived with major bipolar depression and have heard it might help. It works with lights. So my mom, who passed away a few years ago, if you guys have been following me, you know that, because I've shared a lot about it and how I work with her spirit these days. She also dealt with bipolar depression, so I can, somewhat understand that. And, I think something like that would have really helped her. I think, who's saying this? The only Madame Fiera, you have to do that research. I think if it feels like, because you left a few comments here, that this is like really lighting you up and like with curiosity. And so I would really recommend you do a little research into it. Because whether it's that or the research opens a door to the right thing, there's something about this EMDR conversation that's sparking an interest. And so sometimes it might be that it leads you to an actual EMDR therapist, or the research leads you to the thing that you want to explore. I don't work with lights. It's these buzzers that you hold, but lights, eye movement, and the buzzers are all different ways to do it. So universe will keep sending you signs even if you miss the first sign. Yes, grounding skills. If you have a good therapist, they'll lead you into grounding. This is for someone who cannot let go of their past. Journaling is so insightful and healing. It is insightful and healing. There's so many, like, you guys are having conversations with each other, which I love. So I'm just trying to sift through this. Same limiting beliefs, fear of success. Yeah, we're going to throw that one out. Like, what does that do for us, right? Like, I just want us to remember that there is like absolutely zero value in like judging ourselves and beating ourselves up. It's just a bad habit. Like, literally, that's all it is a bad, shitty, fucked up habit. And so let's like practice speaking more kindly to ourselves. And that's why I mentioned curiosity a lot, because curiosity has a very different frequency and vibration than judgment, criticism, whether we're judging and criticizing another actually vocally or in our head quietly, or we're doing it to ourselves, right? But when we get curious and realize that for the most part, the world's not trying to take us down. When we can learn to stop looking at everyone in our life and the world around us as though it's trying to take something or take us down, like that's just a shitty, crappy, habitual belief that was probably born in a lot of different places. And I'm not saying that we don't need to keep our wits about us and be street smart. That's not what I'm saying. Like, that's good to develop. But I really believe that for the most part, the majority of people, regardless of what the news and your scrolling might tell you, that the most people just want to live their lives and just want to be happy and be healthy and bring good into the world. I feel like that's what most people want. Unfortunately, media sensationalizes all the scary stuff, and then it looks like it's everywhere because it's getting posted everywhere, and it sucks, and we should be aware of it and educate ourselves, take action, yes. But for the most part, I believe that most human beings on your block, in your town, in the world, just want to live their lives and like be happy and healthy and have a healthy, beautiful planet. So if we can start to shift our perspective when it comes to our own growth and healing, or even when we meet people or situations that don't quite feel aligned, that instead of like saying, oh, they're toxic or judging it, to stop that and just let people live their lives knowing that like they're learning like us, and to be curious about how we can show up more, how we can be more in our hearts, how we can soften into the moments, even the gritty moments. And then again, ask for help, like not being ashamed to ask for help when we need it. So and there's so many, I'm like talking about specific things that I've been doing. I'm seeing in the comments here, there's so many things in the world that can help you. There's so many tools. The Moon Deck is absolutely one of them. In many ways, when I wrote the Moon Deck, I was speaking to many younger versions of myself who really needed help and didn't know how to ask for it, who needed support and didn't know where to turn, who needed a voice that wasn't necessarily always there. So a lot of that healing is in the Moon Deck. And I'm sure even more of that type of healing in an upgraded version will be in my next deck whenever that happens, because I'm just constantly evolving. And I really, truly hope that everything we put out on the Moon Deck page, on my personal page, our products, our newsletters, these conversations, I hope they help. And I hope they support you. And if they do, please share them with others. Let us know, engage with us on the pages so that we know that we are actually making a difference and that like this is needed. And it's just that beautiful exchange where we can just support one another, support ourselves, and put together our little toolkits so that they start to feel like our home base, and that we kind of kick those little freaking demons and old belief systems like to the curb, or change their job position so that they are loyal servants, or send them back to the light. Those are the options, but we don't want to be in a constant fight with them. All right, so let's go ahead and shuffle. I cannot believe we've been here this long already. I just was going on a tangent. I haven't had my own live here yet. And also, how are these Intuit talks for you? Those of you who've been here we've been doing them for a year. If you've been here for a lot of them, or you just occasionally drop in, how are they for you? Because we are considering a pivot, maybe just doing them more occasionally. And, I'll be here dropping in. If you like having me one-on-one, let us know. I know sometimes I do split screen and pick cards, but we want to hear from you. What do you want more of when it comes to our presence here? Let us know in our DMs. We would really love to hear from you. Just think of it as like a live activated survey. What do you want more of? What are you loving? How can we be here for you? How can we get you to engage more with us? Especially in the changing algorithms, the more you engage with us, the more we can give to you. So just want to put that out there. All right, everyone take a deep breath in. blow it out. Let's take 2 more like that. Huge inhale, the biggest inhale you've taken all day long. Hold the breath. Sip in more. And then just let this whole conversation out of the mouth. Whatever it's bringing up for you. 1 more deep inhale. Hold. Close the eyes. If you need another breath or 2 just like that, please take it. And when your eyes are closed, just feeling into your being, feeling what is present for you, whatever it is. Just be curious about it, whether it's comfortable or uncomfortable or neutral. Please, with honesty and curiosity, feel what is most present within you and right around you. Just feel it and be curious, and notice how curiosity changes the conversation and helps us to soften. And then repeat after me, just quietly to yourself. Say to yourself, I love you. And you can say your name afterwards. I love you, whatever your name is. I love you. I love you. I love you. And just keep saying this. Soften your jaw. Soften your shoulders. Soften the very belly center of your brain. Soften your actual belly. If you tend to hold your belly, let it go. And just keep saying this to yourself a few more times. Good. Notice the difference. Good. I feel a shift just from that. That's all it takes sometimes. I see your comment, Melinda. I'm totally on board with you with that. There's so many beautiful comments here. Thank you, everyone, for just being so present and so engaged and having such important, beautiful conversations and letting yourself be seen, seeing others. Like, we all just want to be seen, heard, felt, loved. And so my advice on that is really like, see yourself and those closest to you the way you crave to be seen. Give yourself care and love the way you are craving for another to give it to you. And then give that to those closest to you. Even if you're calling in a lover or more community or more of this or more of that, pay attention to what's right under your nose. How are you giving to the ones already around you? That is what's going to magnetize the bigger vision so that you're prepared for it. It's kind of like I said, when it comes to intuition, start with the small stuff. Like, what tea do I want? What this? Like, so it can swell and be really like, alive when the bigger stuff comes up. That also applies to giving love and care and seeing and listening to yourself and those closest to you, even as you're calling in a bigger vision. Practice being there in that way already with what's present, so that you start to shift and align with that which you're calling in. And when it comes, you're actually super lucid and present and awake and in practice already for it. All right, so let's pick the card. So I picked one from the top and I just shoved my hand into the middle and picked one. So we actually did get the compass card. Intuition. I had a feeling that would happen because every time I do these, I used to do these lives just by myself every Monday for like 3.5 years, like literally did not skip a Monday unless I traveled and didn't have Wi-Fi or something like that. Then I took a little break and then we started with Intuit Talks. And in those weekly Moon days, if y'all remember, the old schoolers here, I used to do Moon days, I would always pick the card that exactly was the conversation. And again, it's happening. So the first card we got is this one. So this is kind of like an inner compass spread. When you take the intuitive oracle training, or if you already are in it or you did it, you know the inner compass spread well. The inner compass spread is a 2-card spread. You can, of course, add more cards as you go. But the first card we got is love and intimacy flow into my life effortlessly. Love and intimacy flow into my life effortlessly. Love and intimacy flow into my life effortlessly. I always say to say it 3 times in a row to invoke its greatest power. So you can see here, I want this to focus a little better. So you can see here, if someone can write this in all capitals, love and intimacy flow into my life effortlessly. There's a woman, and you see this being of light all around her, embracing her. Those are the arms. And she has the full moon cycle on her back. So this being of light, this figure of light, is really up for interpretation. Love and intimacy flow into my life effortlessly. What does that mean to you? Before I even go into the meaning, what does that mean to you when you hear this sentence and you see this image? Because whatever comes up for you has truth in it, regardless of what I say or what the guidebook says. The guidebook, which I wrote, the guidebook will deepen the meaning. But when you use the Moon Deck for your healing daily practices, your self-care practices, your intuitive practices, you want to give the card a moment to simmer in your own intuitive wisdom, in your own life experiences, so that the answer within, the remedy within, arises to the surface. Then you can open the book and go deeper, dial up the volume, go further. There's also a ritual for every single card in the Moon Deck. There's 44 cards. Every single card has a write-up and a ritual. So that is the way that you go further with the Moon Deck. This is a very collaborative, practice-oriented, ritual-oriented oracle deck. So this being of light, when it says love and intimacy flow into my life effortlessly, this being of light could be your beloved, whether you have one in your life or you're calling one in. It could be great spirit. You know, if you've been a stranger to yourself lately and you've not been tending to your relationship with spirit, that's when this card can come up as well. Love and intimacy isn't only about our sexual experiences. Intimacy could be the intimacy between you and your best friend. Intimacy could be the intimacy between you and Great Spirit or your guides. Intimacy can be about yourself. Intimacy could be with your beloved partner, your colleague, the world around you, the earth. You know, I recently had a challenging conversation with a very close girlfriend of mine. And I was, because like some things you want to just let roll off the shoulder, other things you have to deal with. And it just kind of kept coming up for me, which meant that internally, like processing it, which meant I need to just like chat it out with her. And the thing about intimacy, being willing to be vulnerable and intimate, first we want to process it on our own so that once we've gone through that, maybe not always, but that's how I like to do it, so that once we go through that, we can calculate for ourselves if we really need to like hash it out with them, or if it was just like our own trigger and we kind of worked through it, right? Once we've done that and we still see it coming up, then maybe it's worth having the conversation. The reason why really intimate conversations can be scary is because there's always that fear of rejection, right? If we open ourselves up and we share what's really bothering us or how we were hurt, or we get really vulnerable, the fear is that they'll reject us and maybe abandon us or move away or not want to be as close. But the hope is the gift of deeper intimacy, which also could happen. The truth is that either can happen. Maybe they do reject us, but we need to find great value in our willingness to live our truth. I am on a path to be in relationships with people, whoever they happen to be, whatever the relationship happens to be, that is coming from a place of depth. to return back to my heart, to learn how to soften and be in my heart with people, to have deeper relationships. And that's going to look different in different places in my life. I'm not going to force it with certain people, right? Like maybe there's certain family members that are always in your life, but it's only going to go so deep. Fine. We learn how to show up in those relationships. Are you willing to live your life as authentically as possible from a place of learning from the heart, of learning how to soften, of learning how to be vulnerable, of being willing to deepen our intimacy and to take down the walls that block our heart? Is that more important to you than living in fear of rejection? If it is, then I want to encourage you to have the difficult conversation. But do your own work first, write it out, whatever you need to do, so that you know how to approach it, so that at the end of that, you remember being fully present in your body and that you did your best. And from there, whatever happens, you trust the outcome because spirit is involved in all of it anyway. So I don't know if that helps. That's what's coming through. That's not always how I would translate this card, but it's what's kind of streaming through right now, especially because it's connected to the intuition card. My inner compass knows the way. So writing that one down, my inner compass knows the way, taking in that image. What does that card mean for you? It's cool that these are together. So if I just picked one of these cards and that was it, I might talk about the card a little differently. But for those of you who are learning how to read these cards in my training or on your own, you start to understand that when multiple cards come together as companions, they start to inform a slightly different story than what they might mean on their own, or what they might mean with a totally different card, right? I just picked up that card. That's not our card today. Because we got these together, there's a storyline unfolding. This card is saying, and because of our conversation we're having today, it all ties into that as well. My inner compass knows the way. This is about coming back home to yourself, which I mentioned here. Coming back home to yourself. Again, if you feel like you've been a stranger to yourself, because not only are we afraid of having intimacy with people in our life, some of us, and sometimes we might be afraid of getting super intimate with ourselves. That could be sensually. Do you know and understand your body? Do you look at your body? That's an act of intimacy. Please do so. If you've not looked at yourself, do so. Get to know your body, understand your body. But also intimacy, like do you have a hard time being alone? Do you tend to fill your alone time or the empty space around you or within you with distractions? That's a sign that there's a fear of intimacy with yourself. This is no judgment. Please completely extract judgment from this and instead get curious. Curiosity is the portal, is the way through, is going to support us as we heal the old wounds and move into our mastery, our art, our refined versions of ourselves. And then our capacity increases to be present for others, to be of service, whatever your thing is. So this is saying, trust what your inner compass is saying. Think of your intuition and your inner compass as your inner GPS system. Think about when you're driving and you put a destination or an address into your Google Maps or your GPS. You put in the address, you hit start, you go. You listen to a podcast, you put on music, you sit quietly and think, you have a phone call. You're not really thinking much about the map because why? Because you trust it. You trust the operating system of your car or of your phone. You put in the destination, you trust where it's going because you set the intention clearly, you double check the address, you know you're good, you put it in, and then you let go. You also trust that when you took a wrong turn, your GPS system will reroute you accordingly. So how can we build that level of trust in our inner compass, in our inner guiding system? So what is one thing that your intuition has been telling you? You're welcome to put it in the comments if you want, and be nice to yourself. Be nice to yourself when you put it in the comments. What is your beautiful inner compass telling you when it comes to love and intimacy and allowing more effortless ease into your life? Remind yourself that life can be effortless in certain areas, right? We can welcome more ease and effortlessness in. Does it mean every second's going to be easy? No. What it does mean is that if we're in a situation that's not easy, that we are willing to move towards more ease, getting ourselves out of the situation. So it might be crunchy as we're realizing that this is a sticky situation. I don't like it. We can either stay in the stickiness, which is definitely not going to be easy, or we can make the efforts, which might not be super easy, might be challenging, but that we're choosing to move towards ease. Do you see the difference? So this reading today is inviting us to really come back home to trusting our inner compass, to trusting our intuition, to developing our skills of discernment, being in our rituals, our practices, getting our outside support system, which I've talked a lot about today just because it's a very alive topic for me right now. And those things combined will get you there. And just make good choices, really feel into those decisions. And then it's combined with this love and intimacy card to get more intimate with ourselves. How do we do that? Get more real and honest. Look in the mirror. Look at what the world's reflecting back to us. Not only when we're by ourselves, but if you see some patterns playing out in relationships in your life or scenarios and situations in your life, and they keep going on repeat, that is a reflection for you to look at, especially right now with the full moon, because this full moon is all about that. And a full moon is is directly opposing the sun, which is why it's really full and bright. Everything is getting illuminated right now. So instead of hiding under the covers with it, if you need a day off to rest, fine, that's not what I mean. But if you're I don't want to deal with it, and you're avoiding intimacy, you're avoiding that fear of rejection or abandonment, right? Go into it with more gentleness, with more kindness. Be really gentle with yourself in this process, but start to build your muscle of trust, intuition, and discernment. Know that as you move through these things, you are sort of in school. You're learning, you're growing, and that's okay. Speak to your inner child. Speak to your future self who's seen it all, who knows what's coming next. And just remind yourself to have that trust as you come back to that central present body self, where you connect to your daily practices. I love to sit at my altar, work with my Moon Deck cards, journaling, lighting a candle, listening to content that reminds me of my truth and power. These are all things that I use to keep me in check. Do I forget and slip up sometimes? Hell yeah. Yes, I do. But we have these practices to come back over and over and over again. And it does start to build on itself. It does. I promise you. It can take a few years. It can take a few months. But just stick with it. Everything needs its incubation phase. We plant a seed, right? We plant seeds on the new moon. Or we water the seeds that we've been planting. And then we let those seeds sprout and germinate and kind of incubate. And sometimes that's a sticky phase. And then the sprout comes and we start to see life grow from the seed. And then we still have to take care of it. We can't just ignore it. It'll die, right? It'll dry out. We still have to tend to it, the seed. We still need to water it. We still need to nourish it. We still need to keep an eye on it and care for it. This could be your health, your business, intentions that you're setting, your mental, emotional, or spiritual well-being, a relationship in your life, your relationship to spirit, watering and nurturing the seed as it sprouts. And then as it sprouts, it begins to bloom. It still needs sunshine. It still needs healthy soil. It still needs to be cared for. And then as it blooms, it goes through this exceptional opening phase where it's open to the bees and the butterflies and for all of us to enjoy, and gives the world life and beauty. And then sometimes it shrivels up and dies down and goes through that whole cycle all over again. So just know that we are cyclical beings, especially those of us who are empaths, deep feelers, sensitives, intuitives. I'm sorry to break it to you, and someone else might say something else that feels better to you, and that's fine. Go work with them. I don't mind as long as you find support that helps you. But in my opinion, if we're empaths, deep feelers, sensitives, and intuitives, we have to show up on a regular basis daily to listen more closely, to really start practicing presence and paying attention, to get back into our bodies and get grounded. However you do that, salt baths, going on hikes, getting into the earth, getting in the sunshine, moving your body, and looking kindly and honestly at where old trauma or belief systems or other people's expectations have tainted our lens, and starting to own what is really our lens to look through. And sometimes there's a little unpacking or unlearning to get there. But I believe it's well worth it. As I said in my post on my personal page today, you can go check that out. I wrote it with so much heart this morning. It just streamed right through me. Please go check that out. But that, like, this is the greatest fortune, a wealth of fortune for our soul, and likely the fortune that our soul takes with it when we are complete and done in these bodies. So I will leave it there for today. I hope this was helpful. We will put the replay up on the page if you came in late and you want to dive into the juiciness of the beginning of this conversation. The cool thing about replays is you can rewind and fast forward as you wish, pause, take notes. And please do be in touch with us. You can comment on this post or DM us. What do you want more of? What are you loving that we're offering you? We are growing and expanding and making some changes. Just let us know. Do you like these weekly talks? Do you want like more actual Zoom workshops? What kind of posts do you like from us? And please keep engaging with us, because the Instagram algorithms are all wonky right now. And as artists and teachers and guides and a small business, the way you engage with us really, really helps show us that we're making a difference. And we would love, love, love to hear from you. It'll be me or Rose who works with us. We are in there full steam, hands-on, and we just want to thank every single one of you. We love you so much, and thank you for being here and having this beautiful conversation. I just want to scroll real quick to make sure that I'm not missing anything. Yes, I wish these comments would stay with the recordings, but they do vanish. All right, all. If you have other questions, come back to this replay, put them in the comments, and I will go in there and type the answers to the best of my ability. Much love, and I will see you hopefully next week, probably next week. All right, or later this week. All right, ciao all.